The Denver Post reported my speech, and a copy was sent to Mr. Mitchell in Indianapolis. He took the paper in to his secretary and said, pointing to the report, "See what Mother Jones has done to me." 3 times Mitchell tried to make the Northern miners return to the mines, but each time he was unsuccessful. "Mitchell has got to get Mother Jones out of the field," an organizer said. "He can never lick the Federation as long as she is still there." I was informed that Mitchell went to the governor and asked him to put me out of the state. Finally, the ultimatum was given to the Northern miners. All support for the strike was withdrawn. The Northern miners accepted the operators' terms and returned to work. Their act created practical peonage in the South, and the strike was eventually lost, although the struggle in the South went on for a year. Much of the fighting took place around Cripple Creek. The miners were evicted from their company-owned houses. They went out on the bleak mountainsides, lived in tents through a terrible winter, with the temperature below zero, with 18 inches of snow on the ground. They tied their feet in gunny sacks and lived lean and lank and hungry as timber wolves. They received 63 cents a week strike benefit, while John Mitchell went traveling through Europe, staying at fashionable hotels, studying the labor movement. When he returned, the miners had been lashed back into the mines by hunger, but John Mitchell was given a banquet in the Park Avenue Hotel and presented with a watch with diamonds. From the day I opposed John Mitchell's authority, the guns were turned on me. Slander and persecution followed me like black shadows, but the fight went on. One day, when I came in from the field where I had been holding meetings, I was just dropping to sleep when a loud knock, came on my door. I always slept in my clothes, for I never knew what might happen. I went to the door, opened it, and faced a military chap. "The colonel wants you up at headquarters." I went with him immediately. 3 or 4 others were brought in, War John and Joe Pajami, organizers. We were all taken down to the Santa Fe station. While standing there, waiting for the train that was to deport us, some of the miners ran down to bid me goodbye. "Mother, goodbye," they said, stretching out their hands to take mine. The colonel struck their hands and yelled at them, "Get away from there! You can't shake hands with that woman." The militia took us to La Junta. They handed me a letter from the governor, notifying me that under no circumstances could I return to the state of Colorado. I sat all night in the station. In the morning the Denver train came along. I had no food, no money. I asked the conductor to take me to Denver. He said he would. "Well," I said, "I don't want you to lose your job." I showed him the letter from the governor. He read it. "Mother," he said, "do you want to go to Denver?" "I do," said I. "Then to hell with the job," said he. "It's to Denver you go." In Denver I got a room and rested a while. I sat down and wrote a letter to the governor, the obedient little boy of the coal companies. "Mr. Governor, you notified your dogs of war to put me out of the state. They complied with your instructions. I hold in my hand a letter that was handed to me by one of them, which says, quote, 'Under no circumstances return to this state.' Close quote. I wish to notify you, Governor, that you don't own the state. When it was admitted to the Sisterhood of States, my fathers gave me a share of stock in it, and that is all they gave to you. The civil courts are open. If I break a law of state or nation, it is the duty of the civil courts to deal with me. That is why my forefathers established those courts, to keep dictators and tyrants such as you from interfering with civilians. I am right here in the Capitol, after being out 9 or 10 hours, 4 or 5 blocks from your office. I want to ask you, Governor, what in hell are you going to do about it? I called a messenger and sent it up to the governor's office. He read it, and a reporter who was present in the office at the time told me his face grew red. "What shall I do?" he said to the reporter. He was used to acting under orders. "Leave her alone," counseled the reporter. "There is no more patriotic citizen in America." From Denver I went down the western slope, holding meetings, cheering and encouraging those toiling and disinherited miners who were fighting against such monstrous odds. I went to Helper, Utah, and got a room with a very nice Italian family. I was told to hold a meeting on Sunday afternoon. From every quarter the men came, trudging miles over the mountains. The shop men were notified not to come, but they came anyhow. Just as the meeting was about to open, the mayor of the little town came to me and said that I could not hold a meeting, that I was on company ground. I asked him how far his jurisdiction extended. He said, as far as the company's jurisdiction. He was a company mayor. So I turned to the audience and asked them to follow me. The audience, to a man, followed me to a little tent colony at halfway that the miners had established when they had been evicted from their homes. When the meeting closed, I returned to Helper. The next day, although there was no smallpox in town, a frame shack was built to isolate smallpox sufferers in. I was notified that I had been exposed to smallpox and must be incarcerated in the shack. But somehow, that night, the shack burned down. I went to stay in halfway because the Italian family were afraid to keep me longer. Another Italian family gave me a bare room in their shack. There was only a big stone to fasten the door. No sooner was I located than the militia notified me that I was in quarantine because I had been exposed to smallpox. But I used to go out and talk to the miners, and they used to come to me. One Saturday night I got tipped off by the post office master that the militia were going to raid the little tent colony in the early morning. I called the miners to me and asked them if they had guns. Sure, they had guns. They were Western men, men of the mountains. I told them to go bury them between the boulders. Deputies were coming to take them away from them. I did not tell them that there was to be a raid, for I did not want any bloodshed. Better to submit to arrest. Between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning, I heard the tramp of feet on the road. I looked out of my smallpox window and saw about 45 deputies. They descended upon the sleeping tent colony, dragged the miners out of their beds. They did not allow them to put on their clothing. The miners begged to be allowed to put on their clothes, for at that early hour the morning range is the coldest. Shaking with cold, followed by the shrieks and wails of their wives and children, beaten along the road by guns, they were driven like cattle to Helper. In the evening they were packed in a boxcar and run down to Price, the county seat, and put in jail. Not one law had these miners broken. The pitiful screams of the women and children would have penetrated heaven. Their tears melted the heart of the mother of sorrows. Their crime was that they had struck against the power of gold. The women huddled beneath the window of the house where I was incarcerated for smallpox. "Oh, Mother, what shall we do?" they wailed. "What's to become of our children?" "See my little Johnny," said one woman, holding up a tiny, red, baby newborn. "That's a nice baby," I said. "He's sick. Pretty soon he die. Company take house. Company take my man. Pretty soon company take my baby." 2 days after this raid was made, the stone that held my door was suddenly pushed in. A fellow jumped into the room, stuck a gun under my jaw, and told me to tell him where he could get $3,000 of the miners' money, or he would blow out my brains. "Don't waste your powder," I said. "You write the miners up in Indianapolis. Write Mitchell. He's got money now." "I don't want your damn talk," he replied, then asked, "Hasn't the president got money?" "You got him in jail. Haven't you got any money?" "Sure." I put my hand in my pocket, took out 50 cents, and turned the pocket inside out. "Is that all you got?" "Sure, and I'm not going to give it to you, for I want to get a jag on to boil the Helen Gould smallpox out of my system, so I will not inoculate the whole nation when I get out of here." "How are you going to get out of here if you haven't any money when they turn you loose?" "The railway men will take me anywhere."